Welcome to the webinar today. We will get started in just a minute. Welcome to the webinar. Welcome everybody to the webinar today. Well, we are going to get started with our webinar today. And today we are going to be talking about how to fill out that mighty big family of forms, SF 424. This project was funded by the USDA Food Safety Outreach Grant Program, and it's a collaboration of Texas Tech University, Alabama A&M University, and Iowa State University. Our grant is titled Empowering Minority Serving Institutions Food Safety Specialists to Write Successful Food Safety Outreach Grants through Education, Training, and Technical Assistance. I'm Dr. Angela Shaw. I'm at Texas Tech University. Dr. Armitra Jackson is at Alabama A&M University. Dr. Shannon Coleman is at Iowa State University. We have our grant writer, Dr. Christine Strom. And today we have a guest, Miss Olivia Martinez, who is at Texas Tech University and the Research Services Division. The agenda for today is we're going to talk about where to find these required forms. We're going to talk about the SF 424 family, how to find help, as well as future webinars. At this time, I'm going to turn off my camera just to keep bandwidth. So let's get started. Where to find the required forms for a grant. So I'm going to provide an example today related to the USDA OREI grant program. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to show you how to identify these mighty forms that might be present for. So this is the RFP for the USDA Organic Agricultural Research and Extension Initiative. One thing that I want you to note with this grant, 2024 deadline has passed, but this RFP is good for next year as well. So if you're considering going into this grant program, it'll be due on February 13th of 2025. So the maximum ceiling for 2025 will be $44 million. The range for this grant will be between $50,000 and $3.5 million. So say you want to go into this grant call. I'm actually currently have an OREI grant, and it's been a real success. So the first thing you want to do is, of course, we talk about going down to your table of contents. Your table of contents tells you everything about the call, from where to find your purpose and priorities. Remember, we are focused on, do we align with the purpose and priorities of a call? It will talk about what are the available fundings, the type of projects, is there a match or not, the eligibility of that project. Also, this call allows for centers of excellence. Centers of excellence get additional money, but they also have additional requirements. Today, we're going to be focused on the SF 424 form. So when we go down to application and submission, when you look down on methods of application, as well as content and forms, that is where we're going to want to go for this RFP. When we arrive at this page of the RFP, they look all about the same. But one thing that you'll notice is it always has a link to the latest NIFA Grant Application Guide. In the next slides, I will take you to that guide and show you all of the wonderful information in that guide. When you pick up the RFP, there's always sublinks. So if I clicked on this, it will take me to that guide. So it's important to just save it onto your computer so you're able to go down. As I go down, it will tell you that we are required under this section to have SF 424 R&R cover page, again, a link to the guide, you're required to have the project and performance site location form. You're also required to have the other project information form that's under this guide. In addition to that, it tells you where you need to put each of the information for these forms. So field 7 will have your program summary and abstract, and then you'll have your narrative. It also describes how many pages you're allowed, the size of the font here, but also what we talked about yesterday was how to do that template or do your cover letter. Well, it tells you that you have to have a response to previous reviews if you were previously there, but it has an outline here of what your narrative does. So I'm going to scroll. Please don't get dizzy, but it actually talks about all of the content that you need to have. You need to have a brief summary, 2 to 5 sentences describing the critical organic agricultural stakeholder needs that you're addressing, 2 to 5 sentences related to your outreach plan, 2 to 5 sentences related to your potential economic, social, and other benefits. So there's a lot of information that you must include in that R&R form for your narrative. It also talks about other information that you need to have related to the introduction, all these key points, rationale and significance, objectives being listed, your approach being listed there, your timeline, and then I talked about the Center of Excellence and Justification, and these are the additional materials you need to have for that. Now we're talking about R&R forms, so I'm going to focus back on R&R forms under that SF 424 forms sheet. And so here's the next set of forms you're going to need to have. You're going to need the Senior Key Person Profile. And again, a link to where you can find that. You're going to need the Personnel Data Form. Again, a link to the same guide. You're going to need your budget, as well as a match if required. You're going to have to fill out a form for that. Another part of this that's in here, when you click on this budget, is you're going to have to put in any sub-awards. And that's a separate form that you can find in this series. So what's important is as you go through, it will tell you all of the specific SF 424 forms you are, but it will also link you to the actual website itself. So let me take you to that form that was linked to, that it said over and over again. So it kept on linking us to this National Institute of Food and Agricultural Grant Application Guide. And it said, oh, you could find all the forms. So once again, we're going to go to our table of contents, and it talks about how to fill out some of the forms, how to start your application in Workspace, but it also has your research R&R forms here. So if I were to click on that, it's on page 23. Here's links to all of those forms that you are required to have based on the RFP. In addition to that, if you are to click on each of them, they do something that's even better. They walk you through every field of that form and tell you specifically what you need to put in each of those fields. So if you have questions related to it, it will give you helpful hints. Sometimes within these fields, it will have another link that can take you to some other helpful hints. So let me go back to my slides and we will continue. So under that example of just doing the USDA OREI example, it listed all of these SF 424 required forms that you need to fill out. It also gave us the link to where I had provided, where we went to next, which is the NIFA Grant Application Guide that walks you through every form, every field, what needs to be included in there. And this is the table of contents for that guide where you can find your application length, the type of forms you might have, any restrictions. This is also where you find your general evaluation criteria that we talked about 2 days ago. So what is this SF 424 series? Well, you can find all of the forms for all of the agencies that grants.gov supports, which includes the Defense, NSF, NIH. You can find all of those on this because there's a lot more forms available. Now, the SF stands for Standard Forms. It's a family of responsible government-wide standard data sets and forms that are for every application package that you might do within grants.gov. I did a screenshot of grants.gov where you can see that there is a lot of different R&R or SF 424 forms based on the agency that you have. So if you were to go into an RFP and going through the guide, it says you're supposed to have a supplemental information form, and you're not finding it in the RFP. This is where you're going to go, grants.gov, going to forms, and you're going to search to find that exact form. And it will come in a PDF. It will also come in a Word form for you to be able to utilize. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And I said we have a special guest with us today. We have Miss Martinez, who is here at Texas Tech University. She is within our grants office, and she is going to do a live demonstration of going through a form. So with that, I will allow her to share her screen and go forward.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw, and thank you for having me to help go over these forms. Let's see.
And please remember, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat or in the Q&A, and we will get to those as seen fit.
Okay, are you able to see my screen?
I am able to see your screen.
Okay, so at Texas Tech, we have our Office of Sponsored Projects office, and your research administrator will assist in completing these forms. I just wanted to go over these with you so you can see what information is required. So this is the SF424 form, and it's kind of the cover sheet. It's going to kind of grasp the main details of who is submitting and what is being submitted. So you have your type of submission, and generally it's going to be an application. You can also do a change corrected application. That's an option. Or the type of application can be new, or if it's a revision or continuation. And you'll enter the date received. The federal entity identifier may be required depending on the funding opportunity, as well as the federal award identifier. And one thing to kind of go back over is at Texas Tech, we use an internal system to system, which is Cayuse. And a lot of this information is pre-populated. So some of it should already be there. If not, like your research administrator will know the information. So you'll also have the date received by the state when your application is submitted. The application information is going to be the entity submitting, which is usually your university name, the EIN number, and the UAI number will be required. And most of these with the asterisk, of course, are going to be required information. And you'll list your address. And this organizational unit may not be required. And the name of the contact person, usually that's our contract office or person that will be entered here in their contact information. And this will be the type of applicant. Usually it's like a university, public, state control, but you'll pick your appropriate option. And the name of the federal agency of who you're submitting your application to, and if they have a catalog federal domestic assistance number, that will be entered here with the title. And again, most of this will pre-populate if you use like your Caillou system workspace is an option, but we don't use that. So I'm not really sure what all pre-populates when you use workspace. And then your your funding opportunity number and the title to that opportunity number are listed here. The competition identification number, we don't usually enter, but again, as appropriate to the guidelines, that may be entered. And you can enter any areas affected by your project if needed. And then this is going to be where your title to your project will be listed. And this supporting document is only as needed per the guidelines. Any congressional district is where your applicant, where you're based out of. And if your project is going to be in a different area, a different congressional district, will be sure and listed here. And of course, there's an option to attach an additional one if there's going to be more than 2. And you'll enter your project start and end date and the estimated funding. The federal funds are going to be what the sponsor provides. The applicant is going to be any match that may be required, and the state and local funds, if those are appropriate categories. And if nothing is required, you would enter 0 since they do have an asterisk next to it. And is this application subject to review under Executive Order 12372? You would just check what's appropriate to the guidelines as well as to your state requirements. And then this will be based off your university as your applicant delinquent. And then as well, you'll need to check that you agree to the certifications and list your authorized representative information below. So that's pretty basic information on the cover sheet, the SF424 information. Again, if you have a system, most of that's going to be pre-populated, and your research administrator usually helps to complete most of that information for you. Do you have any questions on this part? And Dr. Shaw, did you want me to go over the SF424?
Yes, could you go over that A, because this is always, the budget is always the fun part.
Yes. And so after you've worked with your research administrator to get your budget finalized, you'll come here to enter the information. You'll list your grant program function activity number and the CFD number here. This estimated unobligated funds generally is not ever used. So you're going to enter under the section for new or revised budget, you'll enter the federal funds that are requested from the sponsor. And as you notice, if you hover over it, does give you some helpful information. And then the non-federal is going to be anything that your university provides as match. And then it should auto-populate. If you're entering it in an internal system, it should give you the total here. And then the next section is going to be where you're going to break down those totals into each category. Depending on the program, you may list all of your total in this first column, or they may have you separated out if you have more than 1 year, but you'll just follow the guidelines. And again, your research administrator will be helpful to make sure we're completing this correct. So you'll just list each total for each category that you have applicable to your project, and any indirect cost. And then it'll give you your total. So section C is non-federal resources. So again, that's going to be anything that's matched that your university is providing. So you would list whatever sources you have there. And the forecasted cash needs, this is going to be for the federal funds that are requested, and you'll list out each estimated, total for the first quarter, second, third, and fourth quarter. And the same thing for the non-federal, for any match that you're requesting, you'll enter those totals here, and then it'll give you the summary. And then for section E, the budget estimates of federal funds needed for balance of the project. This will be your total first year. So for section D, if you have any other out years from years 2 to 5, possibly, you'll list those here, any other funds that are requested or needed for those additional years. And then your direct charges, you'll just, as the instructions have there, provide any information or details that will be needed. And your indirect rate, you'll list that here. And your base that you use for your rate. So that's kind of all the information for that SF424A form. There is, depending on the program, there is another, the R&R budget form that may be required. Did you want me to also go over that one?
Yes, please.
Okay. And let me, it's not the right form. So there's lots of forms to choose from, as you can see. So we'll download the R&R budget. So you do have this other option for the R&R budget. You'll enter your UEI number and whether you're the project lead or a subboard. And then you'll add any key personnel that you have for your university, their first and last name, depending on their academic. You'll enter whether you're requesting calendar months or academic months or summer months. And the requested salary, the fringe, and their total. You do have this option here to add any additional key personnel. And then your total will show here, so you'll make sure it matches your internal budget that you use. And then you go down to section B for your other personnel, and here you'll list any postdocs, graduate students, undergraduate students, any staff position. You can also customize the personnel. If you need additional personnel, you can add them here. And then you'll list how many months each personnel is expected to work, their salary and fringe. And then here it will total out all the personnel totals. And then the second page goes over any equipment that you have. It does say here equipment must be an item of $5,000 or more, and you'll list the name of the equipment and the cost. It does give you an option to list additional equipment as needed. And then section D goes over your travel. You do want to separate your domestic travel and any foreign travel cost. And section E is your participant trainee support cost, and you'll want to separate out any of the costs you have separated for like tuition fees, health insurance, stipends, travel, subsistence, and then you enter the number of participants that you're expecting.
And I'll pop in here because we'll talk about budget and budget justification, but for those that are on the call, this is an important area for if you're doing any work training or you have students part of the grant and you are supplementing them, so you're giving scholarships or anything like that, this is the area where you'll put in that. But we'll have a whole webinar on budget and budget justifications to get in a little bit more detail. But this form is very important because this is usually what you submit when you are a subaward and you're submitting to somebody else. So this is the form that usually goes forward to other universities.
Correct. And this, you're welcome. Thank you. This should be the same form that you use to enter as a lead, but also if you're subaward, it's helpful to enter this information here and then just send it to the lead because they can upload this same document into their system and not have to kind of manually enter, which avoids any additional mistakes that could happen. So on to the next section will be your other direct cost, and here you'll itemize out the listed categories. For materials, publications, you do have an option to add any customizable, anything that doesn't fall into those categories, to list out their totals. And it'll total out all your direct cost from A through F. And then you'll go to indirect cost and enter your indirect cost type that you're using appropriate to your university or the program guidelines. And the indirect cost rate, and then the indirect cost base and your total indirect cost that you're requesting. You will list your cognizant federal agency. If you have an approved indirect cost rate, their contact information goes here. And
Ms.
then you'll have,
Martinez, we actually have a question for you.
yes.
There's a lot of acronyms here. Is there an index or somewhere that people can find what all these wording means or letters mean?
They on this, and I'm not sure if I minimize if you can still see. Let's see. So on some of the forms, they do have instructions that you can download that'll give you a bit more information. I'm honestly not really sure. And these forms, again, at Texas Tech, I'm not sure your university, but typically your research administrator will fill these out because we work on these on a daily basis, and it's like second nature to us. So if at any time you do have any questions or you don't understand anything, like, you're always welcome to contact me, but your research administrator should have this information to understand what these acronyms are, because there's, like you say, there's several acronyms, and you may not be expected to know what they all mean. So you're welcome to reach out to your research administrator. Okay, any other questions?
I don't see any.
Okay, so kind of moving on heading towards the last sections, it's the total direct cost and indirect cost. It'll total it out here. There is a fee section. We don't ever use that fee section. It does have a detailed instruction for you of what is allowable there and who is allowed to enter information there. And then that gives you your total project cost. You do have the option to upload your budget justification here as an attachment. And this will be for the first year of the project. If you have additional years to complete, you can select add period, and it populates additional pages for you to do budget period 2, and you'll enter the same information. I believe if you're using this PDF download attachment, it copies year 1 if you've already filled it out. So just make sure that you're double checking like your start date and end date and any other information if it's not duplicated. And that just kind of just if you scroll down, it'll keep giving you the same categories for budget period 2. And then it will have the cumulative budget, and that just sums up all your total costs for each budget item, the personnel, other personnel, and you'll just kind of want to reference these back to any internal budget you have to make sure your numbers are matching. And then it should give you like your final total cost here. And that's kind of the basic information to your R&R budget form, which is an additional option that you can use depending on the guidelines. And I think that kind of goes over the forms.
Well, we will look for more questions at the end. I'll continue sharing and we will wait for questions at the end as well. So let me continue with our presentation. So all these forms, it's so much, there's acronyms. I may not have a research or somebody in my government or my research office to help me. Who's going to help me? Well, USDA has done a great job with doing a whole series of YouTubes where they download almost all of these forms, especially the major forms, and they take time and fill them out. So the forms that we just went over, the section A through F, I'll have links of all of these on the website. So you can go and look at these short YouTube videos, or I say short, they're 15 to 30 minutes in length to fill them out. So with that, our similar advice is always start early. Forms always have errors. And when you have subcontracts that you have to combine things for like the budgets and stuff, you need to have the time to make sure you're gathering it. Because a lot of times when I'm working on grants and I'm getting subcontracts from other people that's on my team, when they're submitting their budget justifications or their budgets from other universities, I have to go back to them and have them update things because their budget justification doesn't match their budget or their numbers aren't in properly. So that's why that 6-month advice that USDA NIFA program manager offered, Dr. Williams, is so important. Also thinking about previous RFPs, I shared today the RFP for the OREI, USDA Organic Research Initiative. That is a 2-year RFP. So it's the same that was for February as for next February. It's important to go in now and identify all the forms you're going to need to fill out and start gathering your developing your 1-page or gathering your letters of support. Determining all the forms and all the things that have to be in your narrative. We talked about the importance of when we extract from the RFP to make sure that we have answered all of the questions or statements we have to address based on the evaluation criteria. All of that takes time. So the goal is always 10 days prior to the submission date to try and have all your forms filled out and everything test run up into the system. You can replace documents all the way up to the end, but we always like to put test ones into the system to make sure that we don't have errors. So with that, I just want to remind everybody that we do have a website that has a lot of previous webinars already on it, pre-populated, as well as this webinar, along with all of the ones that we've done previous, will be up by the end of this week. This is the topic of all of our webinar series. So if you miss any of them, you can go back and watch them. I will also remind you that during the summer, we do have our summer writing group that will be on Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we welcome you to join in on those starting in June. And during that, we're going to have our accountability group. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. well, I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to turn on my camera and I'm going to ask, do we have any additional questions related to the R&R form and where to find them, how to get help? And as we're waiting, I do have a question for Miss Martinez. First question is, as a faculty member and working with my grant office, what are some helpful hints or tips that I can help get the information to you to be able to submit?
So that's a good question. I think one thing is kind of communicating well and trying to be as proactive in responding to emails or phone calls. Um, I like to have like the guidelines as soon as possible, so we both have time to look over them, um, to see what's requested from the sponsor. Some things that I generally ask for to start off with is the project start and end dates, the project title, any personnel like from your university that are going to be on the project, just so we can start creating that budget and having everybody that we need to begin with. You don't want to leave anybody out, or maybe if you add somebody later, it's like, oh, we don't have enough in the budget, and you kind of have to go back and cut things out. So those are some things that I think that are really helpful to kind of start. Um, is the guidelines, and then the project start and end date, the title, and then all the personnel, as well as if you're going to expect any subawards. We like to give the subaward enough time to prepare their documents, their budget, and send it to us early so that we have time to put everything together. And if something doesn't work out, hopefully there's enough time to go in and make those corrections with ease, and nobody's kind of panicking last minute to kind of make changes. Because when you change the budget, that could impact other documents, like your current and pending or some other document that could be affected as well. So those are some things that I look for that are helpful.
We have another question amongst the group, and it says, why are some of the boxes in the forms yellow, outlined, outlined in red, and other boxes not? Um, is that significant when they're highlighted on the forms, or do you have comments related to that?
Um, I honestly am not sure. We rarely use like the PDF download version because we have our internal system and it doesn't give us like the differences of in yellow and like the purpley color. I think those are going to be um, editable fields. And usually the white fields, it's going to like sum up your totals. Um, but I know in my experience, in filling out the PDF, like when we're subaward, I'm having to add the total. It doesn't automatically sum everything up. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I definitely can look into that and let Angela or Dr. Shaw know that whatever information I find out, because I know she's doing a frequently asked questions form, and we can include that in there.
Yes, and I agree. So some of the boxes are required and some of them are optional. And but in my experience of looking at these, just because it's highlighted doesn't mean that it's an option, that it's a required one, and just because
Right.
it's white doesn't mean that it's optional. You really have to go to the RFP and make sure you're including everything that is required. So when you go to that NIFA um, application guide, it does say all the required fields and what needs to be in it. And it labels them 1 through 50 of what should be included. And it does tell in those instructions, this is required, this is not required, and things like that is optional. So again, that guide is another good place to be able to find. Hopefully that answers the question. I do have another question for you, and that is, What if you're filling out the form and there's no one to help? Where do you go to get help to fill out these forms? That might be a person or an email that people can go to if they're struggling with the forms.
So as far as like filling it out, the website has some of those forms have an instructions link that you can download. Our internal system, Cayuse, typically your research administrator will work out any issues, and if they're not able to fill it out, like if it's more technical, they'll reach out to their system contact to see how we can resolve the issue. And for workspace, I'm sure there's a a contact that you can reach out to. We just don't use that. So I really am not, and I'm happy to kind of research that and provide Dr. Shaw with an answer as far as workspace. But there's usually like a process. You want to start with your main contact, your research administrator, and they kind of go from there to their contact for like the system to see how to resolve it.
And one helpful hint that I've used before, working with entities that don't have a research program, is that there is an email on grants.gov. They're not very quick to respond. So we've been at the very end of trying to submit, and I was a co PI, and errors came up. Well, they emailed the help email, and it took several hours for them to respond back. There is a phone number as well that does take some time to go through, but they are able to walk you through. So, this is another reason why, when you're doing these forms and getting towards the end, you really need to make sure that you're doing this ahead of time. Because, in my experience, if you do the email, it takes them an hour or so to resolve. Um, because it could be on their end, it could be on your end, could be systems not communicating properly. So you need to allow time. So that 10 days as well as 6 months is very, very important for that.